Welcome to Rebel Without Applause, where we explore the intersection of sports, entertainment, and culture. I'm your host, Maurice Bob, and today we have a very special guest on the line. She's a visual artist, an actress, a writer, and the lead vocalist for The Sufferers, who are, and I quote, a Gulf Coast soul band from Houston, Texas, bringing elements of classical American soul and rock and roll to crowds that love to dance. Love that last part. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Cam Franklin. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah, you have a lot of energy already. I can feel it. Did you have a great day today?
I would say as good as it can be in 2020, which is pretty uneventful. So yeah, it's a good day.
Yeah, very uneventful. So you've been doing well. Your family's doing well, and holding up well during the pandemic.
I mean, honestly, I've just been trying to stay focused on working and staying productive as much as I can, and really just figuring out where to evolve my businesses where necessary. And it's been, it hasn't been easy for anybody per se, but it's been good to like see where I can adapt and where I need work, because I think every business really needs that opportunity at some point, and a lot of times you don't get that.
Yeah, you're using the synonym to my favorite word during this time. You say adapt. I love to say pivot. I found so many different ways to pivot. I think if you're in business, if you don't find a way to pivot, you're going to be left behind.
Definitely.
Just in all facets of life, you got to learn how to pivot right now. And this is a true, um, you know, battle tester, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how things are going to wind up on the other side of this. Um,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think we'll be just fine. It'll be different, and I think that's okay.
yeah, well, that's going to have to be the new normal, as they say.
Yeah,
Figure out what that looks like, but we know what's coming.
yeah.
So, like I said, thanks for joining. And, one of the questions I like to start off with, just kind of right out the gate, is, keeping in tune with the show theme, Rebel Without Applause. I think you're the perfect rebel for this show. Uh,
Oh.
so, what would you say, and I'm sure you have many, what would you say is your most rebellious moment today?
to my most rebellious moment
Yeah, to date, yes.
to date. I don't know if there's one that tops anything in particular. Um, but I know one that's probably stands out in my mind is really just standing up to some of my earliest uh, music teachers that really just didn't understand that we're not all built the same way. Um, and I didn't know how to really explain that being a teenager at the time that it first happened. But you spend so much time studying other artists and trying to figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. My internet's being funky. But you start trying to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. And early on, I had to learn how to start speaking up about what wasn't working for me, and explaining, like, hey, I don't sound like everybody else. I don't look like everybody else. And little did I know, the first time that I did that, which was I was 17, um, would be the first of many, many, many times I would have to keep doing that throughout my career. And it's something that I have learned exists not only in music, but in every career, especially if you go uh, into entrepreneurship, and you start kind of going on your own path. And when people don't necessarily understand, or they haven't seen something before, um, it's very easy for them to shut something down without realizing that sometimes it might just be innovation. Or sometimes someone just might be doing something in a different way altogether that has always existed, but maybe they just don't know. Um, but I never really looked at it as being a rebel. I just looked at it as being true to myself, which, adults teach us from day one when you're a child. Stay true to yourself, be yourself, be yourself, be yourself. And then you get into adulthood and you realize so many people are not themselves. And so it begins this weird cycle of am I tripping or are y'all tripping? And the older I get, the more I realize that people are not only, not completely comfortable with themselves, but the idea of other people being comfortable with themselves makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we as a nation are suppressed, and I think this young generation is a perfect example uh, of what can happen when you allow people to really just be free and focus on mental healing and being kind to one another rather than, how we all look or how we all perform or whatever. I feel like we're very focused on the wrong things as a society. Um, but this isn't anything new. And so I personally have just always chosen to lean towards those that seem to just be comfortable in their own skin.
So you mentioned, this happened when you were, around 17. Where did you get the, let's call it what it is, the unmitigated gall to push back on teachers and people who quote unquote know everything, or trying to teach you, how to go down your lane? Where'd you get that, that strength to do that, to push back?
I mean, I was definitely surrounded by that, by strong women, but I also had a lot of great examples in the content that I was watching, from those Barbara Jordan speeches as a kid to, simple things like watching Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act, or watching What's Love Got to Do with It, and just really seeing what happens when a woman who is beyond talent has to kind of just push beyond the expectations of the world, especially Black women. I have people trying to police me at all times, and not just in the way that I live my life in terms of legalities, but who I choose to love, who I choose to work with, how I choose to speak, how I choose to engage. And I've worked with so many people over the years from different cultures, different genres, different everything, and it always breaks my heart when I hear people that insinuate that my behavior or the way that I carry myself is something strange, just because, again, I'm just being honest, or I'm being kind, or I'm being just myself. And it's like, honestly, me trying to do the other shit just didn't work. Like, the universe is not on my side like that. Like, when it comes to me being inauthentic, I always make this joke about how I almost bought a fake ass back in 2008, and I always tell my band, I'm like, man, if I bought that ass, I bet we'd be making like double right now. But at the same time, I was able to invest in something else that I still use to this day, and it helps me. And it's hilarious how the things you think you need are the things you don't actually need. And that's not to say that the women that have made those investments in themselves haven't been able to do what they need to do, but it's just like little things like that. And so I decided to put more of my focus into my music, and to learning how to get better at it and write better, and work harder at it and understand it more. And so that's where I'm at now.
Perfect. So, let's talk a little bit about your journey, and go back a little bit. When was it that you found out, number one, that you could sing, and when did you fall in love with it, or the idea of, being a singer?
I don't think I was ever not in love with that idea, but I started singing at age 5 when I was in church. The pastor gave me a microphone. I had a choir director at that church. Her name was Sister Robinson, who went out of her way to correct my voice, teach me all parts of the choir, because she could hear that I could sing them all, and would encourage me. She's like, yeah, if you can sing them all, sing them all. If something sounds like it's missing, sing that. And as I got older, I didn't realize that she had advanced me through training me from such a young age. And so a lot of times I would feel not like I was being held back, but like that I just wanted to do more. And then I would be told to chill often, like, yo, relax, yo, hold on, hold blah, blah. And it's something that happens a lot in the industry. I kind of laugh sometimes when, and it's usually men that do it, but it's one of those things where you gotta let people fail sometimes. Like, if they really think they know what it is, like, let them show what you could do, or let them show you what they can do. And then I feel like you can get a better gauge of where to start rather than just like assuming that everyone has no comprehension or capability. And she was one of those teachers that just led with the assumption that all kids were smart. She's like, y'all are all, very talented. You can all do this kind of stuff. And as I got older, that's just how I led. It's kind of amazing, right? You teach kids anything, they listen. And so I just happened to come from a generation where I was taught I could do anything. And so it's very hard for me to listen to people that don't function that way, because I don't think about it like, oh, I can do anything. I can fly. I can do all this other stuff. It's like, no, if a vision comes to me and I see it front to back, it doesn't matter if you see it if you can see it or not. If you're trying to be a part of this team, like, let's make it happen together. But otherwise, like, me trying to like constantly convince people that like what I do and how I work, like that's just not a part of what this is. So I've been singing for 20 25 years, 27 years now. And it just keeps getting more fun and more interesting. And I'm always excited when I'm challenged in new ways, and when I get to do a genre I haven't gotten to sing before, or work with an artist that wouldn't technically make sense on paper. And that's pretty much how I've always like lived my career. I started off doing punk rock and ska, and maybe that punk music is probably where I got the gall also. But
Yeah.
but I was listening to a lot of black punk rock. I was listening to a lot of Bad Brains. I was listening to a lot of Fishbone, and these these black men from DC and California, just really just being true and free and weird and existing on their own terms. And I didn't always necessarily fit into what was considered normal and cool in terms of popular black culture, but it didn't take away from the fact that I was a part of the culture. I have this Outcast shirt on right now, and it's always really funny to me when people talk about how tight Outcast is. And um I definitely remember people shitting on Outcast all the time.
Definitely
And
they do.
I think it has a lot to do with people coming into their own weirdness and quirks, and coming into who they are as people, and realizing, yo, we don't all have to be the same. We don't all have to like one thing. You mean we're complex um as a people, and we can consume and enjoy and hate on and dislike different stuff just like everybody else. Wow, what a concept. So like that's really just how I've always lived my life. Is kind of, I feel like I like a lot of like this has been happening, but I just have to keep flowing and hope that I don't offend people on my way. I just kind of feel like I'm just existing the way that most black people, well, not most black people, most black women, I feel, exist, which is, I feel like I'm constantly repeating myself and smiling and waiting for people to catch up.
Wow. So it's funny that we had this question earlier, but then when you follow the breadcrumbs, you have this teacher when you were five in the choir or whatever, who just sort of opened up the gates and just really let you shine and be who you are and sort of lead you down that path. Have you seen her, talked to her since then? As you've grown
So
personally.
she actually passed away about 10 years ago.
Ah,
I mean, it was one of those things where it was unfortunate when it happened, but she had actually moved on to a bigger church. She was, I believe, teaching at Lakewood for a while before she had passed. But at that same point, by the time I had found out that she had passed, I had gone through so many different programs, and had dabbled in chamber and opera music, and was really trying to figure out, like, what do I want to do? Do I want to go into this rock and roll world? Do I want to go into classical? Do I want, and I feel like her teaching really prepared me for anything. But at the same time, uh, all the other teachers that I had, whether the experiences were great or not so great, I picked up so much from them over the years, and the range is just all over the place. And um, I'm really just grateful to them as people and as teachers, and I continue to use what I took from that time today.
So Houston has been come to be known as a place where great voices come from. What is it about Houston that just sort of delivers that talent or hones that talent?
I mean,
What's
first of
Houston
all,
about you?
it's definitely in the water. I definitely feel that, and I mean that about the whole city, especially Third Ward, Acres Homes, Fifth Ward, especially. But it's like it's such a cultural environment um, that is rich and excuse me, drenched in so much deep history that goes beyond what we see today. From you know people getting to learn about Juneteenth to people for some reason just now realizing Texas used to be Mexico, and there's a lot. It's like you can change what a state is called. You can change, the country that owns it, but you can't change what it used to be just because colonization. But whatever. It's one of those things that I feel lives on here, and between the proximity to New Orleans and Louisiana to um, all the influx of cultures from around the world, I feel like to grow up singing in Houston is to grow up in a global environment that prepares you for a bigger stage, whether you choose to step onto it or not.
Wow, that's a really good point. And like you said, we're so close to New Orleans, which has that history, and it's a lot of transplants back and forth and so forth, and just this
Mm-hmm.
exchange of culture and creativity and all kind of artistic expression. So I definitely can see that piece of it. So what were your early influences, and have they how have their influences changed over time, and when you look back on it?
I mean, some of the early influences I still listen to today, like Aretha Franklin and Mahalia Jackson and Selena and Dolly Parton. But really, more than anything, I was listening to a lot of gospel as a kid, a lot of that 90s, early 90s, late 80s gospel. So a lot of Clark Sisters, Kirk Franklin. Um, uh, but R&B really just got me as a kid. So like that era when Brandy and Monica were first coming out, I feel like I am one of the recipients of that. Oh my God, like they're just so amazing. But also, Destiny's Child and Erica Badu and Jill Scott and Lauryn Hill and Alice Coltrane. Like I love anytime I can find music where it's especially a black woman just doing something that I've never heard before. My brain is like, what is this? How can I hear more of it? I'm also inspired by, what so many people right now are doing. Like I absolutely love um, Lisa Harris, who's based here locally, Brittany Howard from the Alabama Shakes, and this band War and Treaty out of Nashville, who are just absolutely killing it right now. And a lot of times I'm realizing, like, there's this whole new era of black music that um, would have never had a space in the industry 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And, I'm just so excited to not only be a part of that era, but also to like be tapping in and seeing what everybody else is doing right now. Like it's a cool time to be creating.
You kind of remind me, not that you necessarily sound like her or have her same stylings, but one of my favorite singers of all time is Nina Simone,
Oh,
and
thanks.
and you kind of remind me of her in just the way you sort of carry the stage and carry your voice and kind
Thank
of
you.
what you're saying in your lyrics, and it's almost like you can listen to you even though you have this big band behind you. It's almost like they fade away in a bit, and you sort of overpower without trying to or without you know doing it in a rough way. Have you always felt that sort of power in your voice?
It's funny. I've always been told that, but I've never thought of my voice that way. Like I used to really think of it like just like this thing that's a part of me, and or this thing I can do. But I always felt inadequate because I was surrounded by so many amazing singers growing up. You know, we talked about the singers in Houston being amazing, but I feel like the best singers in Houston are at the church, and you will never see them on stage because they have a very high paying job and they have no interest in this industry bullshit. They sing for Jesus on Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday, and that's what they do, you know, like, and it amazes me, but that's what I grew up around, and I again I take it in as such a blessing because I realize like, yo, the training is all around you sometimes and you don't even know, like, and that really was that for me. um but when I think about like the idea of like overpowering my band or anything like that, it's, you know, it really depends on the person that's watching, and that's the cool thing I think about being in this band, because there's definitely been, it depends on where we are, because there'll be some cities sometimes where like we'll all come out afterwards and everybody wants to talk to me and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then there'll be other times where like everybody wants to talk to the horns, everybody wants to talk to Choppy, our percussion player, or Kevin, our guitar player, and it's like it takes a lot, you know, when you're first launching to become that unit. And when we first started performing, one of the first pieces of big advice we got came from Lionel Richie. And he was like, they gonna try to split you up. They're gonna try to make you go solo. Don't y'all ever break up. Stay together. Stay together. And next year makes 10 years of us doing this independently. And every year I meet tons of people that are like, you know, I've never heard of you. I've never, how come, you know, y'all just getting started? Da, 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 da. And I'll be like, we've been on a bunch of late night. We've done this, we've done that. And it's almost like at one point of your career, you're probably like, I got to tell them what I've done. I have to carry this badge with my resume on it and blah blah. But honestly, like everywhere I go and every year that we continue to do this and we continue to survive, I always tell my band, I was like, we're an anomaly. We are an anomaly, you know, because aside from us continuing to do this as a unit and continuing to exist and learning how to evolve together as a band, while we like I have my solo career, they have their solo businesses or whatever, we're starting to look at this band as, you know, okay, it can become passive income. How? Why? Because we've done the work. And if just like with any other entrepreneurship or any other company, you last as an independent business for 10 years, like that is wild. Like that is an accomplishment. And a lot of artists don't go into this career looking at it as that. And now I'm like, I don't ever trip about what people think or say of us because, in the words of Pimp C, you know, I don't trip because the money's already made. So, like, that's that's what it is.
And you know, you really touched on it, how there's so many different influences coming from this area, and big time in hip hop too. You know,
Hmm.
and, you know, you guys even have sort of a hip hop style to where you're improvisational, and you know, you go against the grain, and you know all those other things. So you have this sort of
Yeah.
attitude of that as well.
I mean, we're so grateful to the hip hop community, not only for just existing, but constantly inspiring us. You know, this new generation will, like, time will tell, you know, what really is influencing them, because so many of them are actually creating their own music as producers now. And that wasn't something that was um, as big early on, because a lot of people were pulling from samples and pulling from other records and whatnot, and, you know, scratching and stuff. And it's been to contribute to the performances of some of our favorite rappers, because we are able to, you know, knock out that side of the musicianship and in artistry. And it's really opened our minds up to not only working with more rappers, but um, continuing to see how we can evolve, so that, like, as we're writing, maybe the whole record isn't something that a rapper would want to hop on. But I love the idea of always having one record on, excuse me, one song on our albums that will inspire, like, the next generation of hip hop artists to either chop it up, mess with it, whatever. Because I feel like that's part of what we do as being a band, like inspire so that people will want to, like, get inspired by us and make their own stuff because that's what the shit is anyway.
Yeah, for real. So, you've had an interesting journey. It's almost like this is your second life. 'Cause before this, you were oil and gas and doing that
Yeah.
thing and doing the quote unquote proper lane, if you will. Can you talk about that time in your life and what made you, kind of, look at that career and kind of take a step and step out on faith and embark on your current career?
Oh yeah. I started off working at this. Well, I had worked in a bunch of oil and gas companies as a temp, like doing reception work, and then I'd gotten hired on as an executive assistant at Macquarie Bank after doing it at a few other places. And um, initially, what was supposed to happen was I was just supposed to be an executive assistant, and this opportunity within the company came up. I was well liked around, and I didn't think I would qualify for the position, but they were like, "Oh, we're actually going to be doing training for it in house. So if you want to apply, it was kind of one of those situations we always like bitch about when you work in corporate. Ah, so and so got the job that didn't even have no qualifications. Yes, bitch, it was me. And you know what? And I learned everything, and it was great. And um, I started working there after doing solo music stuff for a while, but I had broken my ankle and I had to get a real job because shit was just going south. And it was like, okay, I can't dance right now. I can't tour right now. I'm not happy right now. I'm not making money right now. And this was also at a point in my career where I don't like the internet wasn't what it was now. And like, honestly, like, I don't know how I would have sustained back then if I actually, I can't even compare it because the times are so different. But they say every job prepares you for the next job. So working with traders, working with Wall Street folks, working with brokers, anybody that has ever worked with some of these people know that they're not always the nicest. And so
Very type
um, but you know what? So am I. So
A.
I learned, and we became good friends because I got really good at the job and learning how to save them money and learning how to communicate with them and learn and like explaining to them, you can be a dickhead to me, you can exclude me, you can keep pushing me out, but all that's going to happen is I'm going to keep getting better at this job, and we can have good interactions, or you can be a dickhead and I'm going to react to you the same way that I'm going to react to you every single day, uh, because I don't react to this type of energy, and they don't pay me enough money to not, and it became a different type of vibe there. And I really appreciate that company for allowing me to grow because it was never about like being rude or intimidation or anything like that. It was literally like, I'll respect you, you respect me, we can make some money. And so my last day there was in 2015, and I'd quit because we had gotten word that we were going to be on Letterman. And
Nice.
yeah, they wished me well, and some of them were mad. They're like, I can't believe you get to like go and like do this dream job and whatever. But they still check in on me. Some of them, I'll still see them at the shows when we play in Houston, or if we go to festivals, sometimes they'll pop up there because they be balling like that. But like, it's always cool to see people from my old life. But it's crazy to look back on and know that in 2021 that'll have been 6 years of me full time doing this and making it work, and the ups and the downs, and really trying to figure this out, and not on some like, oh, I'm just going to quit my job and it's all going to work out for me. Like, we quit our job with no major label, like not that much money in the bank, because we had a years later. I don't regret anything, and I feel like we're still learning how to get better at this, and um, we're finding new ways to fall in love with it every day.
But so I saw the Letterman appearance, and it's like, all of you guys had this energy, and like, you could tell it was almost like this duality where you could tell it was your first time, but also at the same time it wasn't. It was like, let's show them what we got. Give you could feel like when you look watch the drummers, you could feel them as they pounded. And you could feel you as you jumped around and sang and kind of interacted with the band. And I think that's what rubbed off on Dave as he came over. And, he was just like, if you can't do this, get out of the business. Like, what
Yeah.
did that feel like? Not only doing it, but also to get that kind of cosign at the end.
Um, I get asked that question a lot, and honestly, like I think our anxiety was on such a high that day that most of us don't remember most of like the day. Uh, but I know we were very excited, and we worked very hard on every part of that show because we had to change the song like very last minute. Because Dave wanted that song, which was cool. But we were so happy and just so in the moment after we got done. uh, I didn't realize that myself and my drummer were the only ones that heard him say that to us afterwards. The rest of the band didn't hear him until the live show. And so, like, me and the drummer were having a very different reaction to everything than everybody else was. And then later on, they're like, oh my God. I was like, y'all didn't hear him? Like, what the hell? And they're like, no. But I realized it's because I had an in ear monitor in my ear, and so did he, and everybody else didn't have one. They had stage monitors, and Dave's mic was going straight into our monitors so we could hear him. So, that will also be 6 years ago next year, and it was a game changer. It was a career launcher, and it's something that I didn't really understand at that point of my career because when you first get catapulted out there, they're just right, like it's like you're being rushed. Like, what's the next big thing? What's the next big moment that you don't get to enjoy any of it? And so now, a lot of people haven't heard of my band, but I realized, oh wait, Dave gave me a resume item for the rest of my life. So on some of my bios, like if it's something weird and I have to like do a whole like, oh, who am I? I just say David Letterman on my band. If you can't do this, get out of the business. That is a conversation starter, and it um, really has allowed me to focus on other stuff rather than always trying to impress people because I don't want to. Like, I'd rather be focused on creating music or being a good person or, like trying to get weed legalized in Texas. Like, those are things that actually matter to me rather than, constantly like, do you love what I do? Are you impressed by what I do? Are you, because everybody's not going to rock with what I do. And if they do, that's amazing. If they don't, like, God bless them, and I hope they find something enjoyable. And like, but I'm in a very different headspace right now, and I'm grateful to be here because I haven't always been here. Um, but it's one that allows me to focus on just being the best musician that I can be and the best artist that I can be rather than constantly trying to live up to other people's expectations.
Well, you touched on something that I just want to hit on briefly because I hope that we come out of this sort of pause that we've been under with more appreciation. Because like in the past we've had trouble appreciating the moment or appreciating our successes along the way. Even when you look at sports, if right after you win the title, they're like, okay, well, what about next year? Well, can I enjoy this one? Well, what's going to happen next year? Let me enjoy this title.
Yeah.
I worked my butt off to get here, and it's always this. Not just that you win, but okay, you got to win again. You got to win again and again.
There's always someone to impress.
Exactly. So I hope that we can emerge out of this with more appreciation for the moment. Appreciate the milestones, the small steps. And like you said, all these people, quote unquote, haven't heard of you, but along the way, you've had these milestones that that you can tick off. You had the David Letterman. You had Afro Punk. One of my favorites is the NPR Tiny Desk. That's one of my favorite, just sort of things in pop culture anyway. Just to
Oh
have,
yeah, it's fantastic.
just like when Wu Tang did it, or it's just a moment to me. Uh, what was that like for you? Did you realize kind of the culture moment that was?
Uh, yes I did realize the culture moment it wasn't as popular as it is now. But it was getting there. It was like right at I call the new generation of Tiny Desk post T-Pain Tiny Desk. Like, because to me, T-Pain singing with no auto tune on Tiny Desk is what relaunched Tiny Desk. It's what made it popular. It's, I think, one of the most popular Tiny Desks ever. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it because it's incredible and he's incredible. But I was nervous, not because of it being Tiny Desk, because I was really excited to play because I used to watch them all the time. I got nervous because uh, we weren't allowed to have monitors set up. So I wouldn't be able to hear myself sing. It's just, so when you see people performing on there, I don't know how it is now, but back when we did it, which was the end of 2015, um, or 2016, I think the end of 2015. When we did it, we weren't allowed to have any of that stuff. It was literally just everybody that you hear in the room. And so me trying to sing over my 9-person band with a full setup hits a lot different than, you know, a 4-piece setup or 3-piece setup or, you know, whatever. And we were on the road and, you know, like it was like a very one of these kind of years for us. And so it was just, will my voice be right? Am I, you know, am I going to sound right? I don't know what was going on with me at the time, but like I was just so worried about like our level of perfection and like how good I know we could sound not being portrayed the way that it needed to be because of the sound not being right. And it was kind of one of those things where, you know, I talk about like having that confidence now and having that assurance now and really celebrating everything now because I wasn't able to enjoy it because I was just so worried about it not being right. And a part of me, I would say it was justified because there were so many people in the damn band. But and I'm when I look back, I am so proud for every moment of that performance, and I'm so grateful for being so particular about the sound and everything. That's why I'm on the desk, so I wouldn't be in the direct um, output of the horns and like we put a lot of thought into where everybody was and who was where and why. And you know, at the end of it all, I think I was able to finally have a good time during the performance. After the second song, I was like, okay, my voice didn't crack. Okay, I can hear myself now. Okay, I'm warmed up. Okay, they're not going to get much louder than this. All right, I can relax and I can see myself when I watch the video, or if I look back on the video, I can see like what moment I finally relax and then I chill out. And it's literally after we finish Midtown, and then I'm able to enjoy it. But at that point, the show's almost over.
Always happens, right? You start appreciating things too late.
It's
Well,
all good.
we're over already. So you know, when you look back on kind of all the different milestones and things that you guys have done, you know, just thus far, you know, what would be your famous or your favorite moment out of all of them, or one that
As a group or with
you,
the band or by myself?
you can either or.
um, with the band, I would say Letterman for sure. Like there's just everything we've done has been amazing. Like we have had some really incredible opportunities, but that first time is just
Hard to beat.
it was yeah. But as for myself, I would say I would have to add Afropunk performance that I got to sit in on. It's 2016. The band performed, but I got to sit in with my little punk rock heroes, with Bad Brains and with Fishbone and with this band Living Color, and George Clinton sat in as well. And so,
Wow.
you know, we got to do. I got to sing "I Against I" and sit in for HR, and then we did two Fishbone songs, and then we finished with Glop. And so, you know, when I talk about, you know, where I sit in and where I don't or whatever, I sit in everywhere. I fit in everywhere. I can do everything. And I feel like a lot of us aren't taught that. And I wish we were, because I think we'd all have a much more enjoyable time.
Yeah, because you're when you look back on the kind of the tapestry of your experiences, if everything kind of aligns and is the same, it's not as great when you look back. When you just like, okay, I tried this, I did this, I stepped out on this, and I went to this different lane, and you learn things about yourself, and you expand yourself, and you kind of become, and that's how you're able to grow
I agree.
in those ways. So I don't know. One thing I like about you and your group is you defy these preconceived notions, and kind of one of these things where I know you made that song after the storm, you know, post Hurricane Harvey, and how there was like this this sort of idea of what the song was and what it was about, but then it's completely different. And
And
then,
that's, I mean, and that's the fun thing about music. People are going to interpret everything however they want to interpret it. A lot of people thought that the song was about the resilience and strength of our city after the hurricane. And it's literally about people trying to get laid during a natural disaster. Because I feel like that's more real. I mean, not that our city wasn't resilient, because it was. But I feel like, the world's ending. People going to be trying to get it. Like, that is
one
definitely, I
last time.
mean, we've seen the pandemic. You have people that have really shown that they can't be alone and stuff, and it's been hilarious to me. I like writing songs about true stories, and I wrote that one with my friend Lisa Harris, and it was just an opportunity to really just kind of joke and laugh about stuff during the hurricane, because I don't know if you were here during Harvey, but it wasn't an enjoyable time for everybody. And depending on where you were, it was a nightmare. And so the idea of bringing a little bit of joy to such a stressful situation, um, just, I feel like it's necessary.
And it's amazing that you were able to go to kind of that space because, like I was here, and
Hmm.
I came through unscathed as far as physically or whatever, if you want to call it that. But I remember just like literally every maybe 5 to 10 minutes going to my front door, watching the water get closer and closer of my driveway and all this other stuff. It was just I couldn't sleep. It was just crazy. And I've always loved water. I've loved the rain. I've loved everything else. But now I get skittish just the thought of it.
You
And
have
so
PTSD.
exactly, yeah. So for you to be able to escape like that and kind of make light and have fun with it, that's more than I could do, especially at the time.
I mean, like, that's all I really could do. I was stocked up, and I had what I needed, but I just needed to create. Really, it was becoming a bit too much for me to just do nothing at home. And that time actually kind of reminds me a little bit of the pandemic right now. But people were far more well behaved during the hurricane than they have been during this. Um, Probably because they had no choice. But uh, at the same time, I look back, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have been able to create anything during that time, because I'm starting to learn that, like, I seem to create out of stress, while some people, like, it shuts everything down.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned PTSD because there's a lot of us going to have it after this,
Mm.
and not just from the pandemic. From watching George Floyd to if you were on the other side of the Trump thing, PTSD from that, his administration, so we're literally living in a time where social activism is not only needed, but it's almost become part of everyday life.
Yeah, definitely.
When you think about that, how do you see this kind of affecting your music, moving forward and how you create and what you have to say?
I mean, I had actually started writing a sexual justice, a social justice.
Freudian
That's all.
slip.
I mean, that's
Sexual
a whole
justice.
other conversation that needs to happen.
I like
But
the idea of sexual justice. Okay, no, go ahead.
I wrote a social justice album called the Bayou City Comeback Chorus before uh, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor had gotten murdered. I had this conversation with my mom just yesterday, how I feel like every generation has that death that really shapes who you are as a culture. And while a lot of people are talking about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, I asked my mom, I was like, do you know the people who were that for you? And, she started talking about them, and she's like, well, who is this, who it is for you? And I was like, no. I said, for me, it's James Byrd Jr. And she's like, you said that so specifically. I said, yeah, he died on my 11th birthday. And a lot of people don't, remember his case. But I told them, I say, you look at the National Hate Crime Bill, and people refer to it as the Matthew Shepard Hate Crime Bill, but it's actually called the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crime Bill. James Byrd Jr., for anybody that needs the reminder, was killed in Jasper, Texas, on June 7th, 1998. And, they chained him to the back of a pickup truck until his body fell apart, and then they left him outside of a black church. But if you go back in the news, they don't mention the church. NPR does, because they told the full story 20 years later after his mother passed away. But like, that particular story has had an impact on me for so long that now I'm just now getting to a place where I'm like, well, I want to write about this. I want to write about other stories that probably got forgotten because it wasn't as popular in the news, that probably found some place of erasure because it wasn't on the news. And so this particular record uh, probably won't be out officially until next year, but I'm going to be doing some previews of it in December for the Bayou City Comeback Chorus. It was an opportunity for me to feature singers that I felt came from more marginalized groups, not just Black artists, but trans artists, Mexican artists, women, men, non-binary, everything, and lead with that diversity and inclusion day one, before the music even got written. And I just decided to focus on topics that I felt just kind of kept happening, from systemic racism to lack of communication between the communities to just a fear of going to sleep because the fear of being murdered in your house, or while doing anything. And these are the topics that needed to be talked about. And what really triggered that for me was actually I went to one of Dave Chappelle's, well, not, I went to a few of his shows last year, but he was doing these pop-up shows last year at House of Blues, and I ended up at two of the shows, and I was able to have great conversation with him both nights. And the second night that I was there, he was like, yo, we listened to your records and your music is so good, but the only piece of advice I would give you is that you need to be more honest. And I was like, thank you. Because I had, a little bit of suppression over the years in my music. And, I think that's something that's a bit normal as an artist when you're first starting and really finding your place, because people are scared sometimes. They're fearful for you and the retaliation that might come from being so honest, from being yourself, whatever. And, I've dealt with, blacklisting and people trying to punish me for being too honest, or, not exchanging sexual favors and in terms for career advancement and stuff, and just like real whack stuff. And it's like, but I'm still here. Like, and I've learned that people are going to continue to keep fucking with me. It's just a part of this industry, and everybody has their own version of this they have to deal with. It's not just me. But I can decide how I react to it. I can decide how I interact with it and how I let it continue to affect me, or how I don't let it affect me. And um, finally having the choice is a very beautiful thing.
Wow. So it's almost like, and I can understand what Dave might have been trying to convey, because I guess when you first start out, you don't want to alienate any of kind of the audience, and you want to be more broader appeal. Even when you're just being yourself, you still want to get as many fans as possible. But sometimes that's not even attainable. And then when you narrow it down to who you are and your voice, it's almost seems like it draws more people in, because they want to know about, whoa, what's that about, and why does that
Well,
ring true to me?
that and the time is changing. People are intense rate and way. You know, like we're seeing people, you know, be murdered on TV now. Like that's normal. So a woman saying fuck and whatever the hell else she wants to say in her music, you know, like that needs to be normalized. And, you know, that's what radio edits are for if people have issues with it. But it's like, we're about to go into a generation of humankind where women, especially darker women, are allowed to be free, where darker people are allowed to exist and have the lives that they want, to, you know, embrace their weirdo tendencies and not be shamed for it, you know, and just like really exist the way that they want to exist. But I completely agree in what Dave was saying and what you were saying, and that, you know, the fear of others and how they consume my art is not my problem. You know, like they can change the channel, and uh, as long as I know that I'm creating in a way to where I am trying to be inclusive and I am trying to be authentic and represent not only myself and the stories of others that might not be able to share in that way, uh, my shit will stay timeless. You know, as long as I'm focused on being real with it. Otherwise, I feel like people can tell when you're not, or I feel like people can tell when you're holding back also.
Yeah, you know, I kind of feel like this kind of cultural shift back to the freedom of the Renaissance. You know, the '60s when, you know, like Miles Davis had the biggest "fuck you" title, "Bitches Brew." You know, I mean, he just was
I
fearless.
mean,
Uh,
it has to happen. It absolutely has to happen. Do you know why? People are angry. People are cooped up, and like their energies and shit are just so out of whack. So like when there's finally a vaccine that's safe enough for everybody, we're gonna see people, you know, going out. We're gonna see people probably being a little wild. Like it's very dangerous that we just had, as conservative, and without getting super political, I find it very dangerous that we just went through such a conservative administration, because what happens when you go through a renaissance, people start doing a lot of fucking, and I don't mean that in like a joking kind of way. Our Planned Parenthoods and all that shit have been shut, like a lot of them have been shut down. So it's like, what happens when people can't afford basic things like protection and birth control? You know, you end up with a whole new cycle of shit that people could have easily prevented. And so I hope, I hope that, you know, as we're getting into this next era of, oh man, we're about to get outside again, probably in the next few months, we're about to really see people release some "we got to get our shit together" music. Like I know I've been working on my full share of like fuck y'all, I'm mad music, but I've also been working on a lot of, you know, we got to work harder, we got to love one another, we have to hold people accountable for this kind of stuff, and like really again focusing like on how I can distribute this better, because for a long time I think people just automatically assumed that my only outlet was the suffers, and I'm like, I'm a singer, I'm a songwriter, I'm a producer, I'm a composer. But this Bayou City comeback chorus album that I'm finishing up right now is pretty much my first case where I'm going to be coming out with those titles in a public way. And I realized I was like, oh shit, I have to like Rick James myself. I have to like I do, so that people understand like this is what I do. There's a reason that back in the day you'd have Prince and him listing arranged, written, and, you know, produced by Rick James or produced by Prince, all of these things, because these labels will try to make you feel as though you're inadequate or like you don't have all the things that you need. And not to say that I'm at the level of those musicians yet, but I can be one day, you know. And so this is exciting, and it's just a step one for me, just as a creator of all this type of shit, and just really hoping to like encourage the next generation of women that are coming out here and seeing like, yo, okay, well she just went through all of this, okay, well she went through all that in the middle of COVID and she still finished these two albums, like what can I do? So
yeah. So it sounds like, you know, you're at this point where, you know, it almost seems like visually you were there, but like sonically too, where you get to this point where it's like, fuck your packaging.
Yeah, I
this is
mean
me.
that. Yeah, I think that was probably the last for having to deal with me in that period of time where we just weren't seeing eye to eye. But um, I think I've always been like that, and uh, there is space for that in this industry. You just have to work a lot harder to get there, and I'm seeing that, and I'm learning that, and I'm now realizing because I'm going that way, um, the path will sometimes seem harder, but the reward is going to be a lot stronger. So I'm just here for the ride, really.
Yeah, well, all of us are going to be enjoying that ride too. One of the things that kind of sticks out, obviously I'm a writer, so I have a lot of sayings, and I grew up with my grandmother, so I have a lot of adages and sayings floating around in my head. And one thing that stands out to me, what Winston Churchill said, was that success is the ability to move from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And
Yeah.
it sounds like that really applies to you and how you navigated your journey. What would you say is not your favorite failure, but the failure where you learned the most about yourself and about yourself as an artist?
Mm, I would say in trying to release our first record, we had quite a bit of major labels kind of sniffing around, and they were like, "Oh, well, we'd love to sign you, uh, but you can only have like 3 or 4 of your bands, or we'll just get you a new band. We'll just get you a new everything." And I'm like, "No." Well, a lot of them were like, "Well, bye, girl, bye, girl," because in their mind they already had examples of what we were to them. They're like, well, there's already an Alabama Shakes, that's racist. There's already a Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, that's racist. And they kept giving us other examples of bands that weren't us. So I was like, y'all racist, y'all racist, y'all racist, y'all racist. But I'm like, I can't keep saying that because they ain't gonna give me the money I want. But for real, y'all racist, and I'm gonna say it again in my mind, you're fucking racist. But it's like feeling like, damn, did I just ruin my whole career because I didn't sign with these people, um, and I didn't, sell out my homies? Um, Maybe. But um, we instead ended up reaching out to our fans on Kickstarter, doing the math, and being like, this is how much it costs for us to do this for real. And this is everything that we'll have to do this for real. If y'all want to help us raise this so that we can release this for real, we'll do it. And they did. We raised 60 grand, and we spent every dime on releasing that record the right way. And it allowed us to compete. It allowed us to get out there and stay out there. And we recouped it, and it ended up being one of those things where, damn, like, we get to keep trying. We get to keep doing this, because here's the thing: a lot of bands don't make it as far as we've made it. A lot of bands don't go past that first album, that second album, especially with as many members as we have, especially with pretty much the same lineup since the beginning. Um, it's something very special, and I don't look at this anything less than a blessing, and I don't really look at any of them as failures. Like, I look at them as lessons. I look at them as opportunities to do a better job the next day, and I look at it as a story for my growth in my book whenever I finish that. And just like, okay. And it's relieving to me to know that, like, you don't get to do this without failing. You don't get to do this without um, having to approach it in a better way the next time. And so uh, I feel like I'm just getting better. And I do believe in that Churchill quote. I would just replace failures with experiences.
Yeah, true. I mean, but if you go back and look at it, we do fail more often than than to succeed.
Oh,
Learn
definitely.
from them and
I just think I don't
get
like the
better.
word failure, and so
Yeah,
I feel like it makes me not consume the quote the way it's meant to be consumed, because I I don't I look at that word as a bad thing, and I know I probably shouldn't, but at the same time I'm like, we've had our it ain't failing because you here. It ain't failing
exactly.
because you tried. It ain't failing because a lot of the people that would call it a failure would have never, ever in their life tried this shit out. So, it's just all how you look at it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Perception is definitely reality. So, I mean, what's next for Cam Franklin? What do you see yourself doing? I know you put a lot of energy into getting people out to vote, and that resonated
Woo!
because serious voter turnout.
Yeah, I had some people that were loving it, some people that were mad. I was like, I don't care if you're mad about me trying to encourage you to vote. Um, but I'm glad I did that, and that is as far as like social justice initiatives that are important to me. Voting is at the top of that list, and um, but as far as what is next for me, I am wrapping up these two albums. Hopefully, they'll be done before Thanksgiving.
Nice,
And then that's the Bayou City comeback chorus record, and also the third full length record from the Suffers, which I'm excited about.
nice. What's that
Um,
gonna be called?
I
The
can't
title?
say yet because
Oh,
I
okay.
said it once, and then they were like, "We're not doing that yet," and I was like, "Okay, let me chill." But I'm really excited, um, and it's just going to be very different. I can say that I'm the executive producer for that record, and I'm very
Nice.
proud of it. And uh, I'm proud of my band and everything that we've been able to accomplish. We started it almost 2 years ago, and well, some of it almost 2 years ago, and recorded the last little bits of it in quarantine. And so it's been kind of crazy to have an album with so many elements, recorded so many different ways, both traditional and non-traditional. But it works, and we're happy, and it's just a different type of steez for us. So I'm excited for people to just kind of get this introduction. Um, and then outside of the Suffers, while all of this has been happening, I've been really tapping in to my career as a visual artist and as a writer. And so I just finished up my first residency with Project Row Houses, and
Nice.
the thank you, and the Good to Foundation for a grant called There Are Black People in the Future. And yeah, I'm pretty much just kind of diving deeper into that world of visual art and mixed media productions, and just trying to evolve with everything that I do, so that it's not just like a one-stop shop for the same thing. I want people to know, like, I'm always going to be trying to bring you a better show.
Nice. So, is your exhibit at Project Row Houses now, or when is
It
it?
is on their social media website, so
Okay.
it should be on both their site. I know that they put the piece up on their Instagram and IGT Live, because all of it was a virtual
Oh,
residency,
virtual.
and so I built an art installation in my house called the Glitter Garden 2.0, and the piece itself is called Homegirl Island, and it's just an Afrofuturistic performance in a it takes place in a black utopia where I'm allowed to do and say whatever I want, and I'm celebrated for doing that. So it might be a fantasy place, but I'm like, hey, that's what we have to do sometimes. Sometimes we have to just make it ourselves.
Now, I'm sure you know this already, but Homegirl Island, that's merch. That's merch gold right there. You did make
Yeah, I know. It's
you not,
it's the it's the name of my company, and it started off as a joke. Like, I kept getting blacklisted by so many people. I was like, okay, great, I'll exile myself, because y'all are like, if I exile myself, can I stop hearing these conversations about me being blacklisted? And or whatever the other shit is, and so it's just been a lot, like way too much. But we out here.
hey, as long as we're still here, we can still make it happen.
Yeah.
That's one thing I'm grateful for. A lot of people, well, 250,000 and counting, aren't here to still, get to the other side of this.
I
You know,
know.
I don't know. I just really hope better days are coming.
You know what? They are coming, but we got to all just do our part to wash our hands, stay our little asses inside, and stay lifted where and how we can.
For sure. Well, I mean, I could talk to you all night. It's been a huge pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming on. And to all the rebels out there, make sure you go check out Cam's work visually, sonically. She's doing a whole lot. Make sure you check out, all of her creative endeavors. And thank you everyone out there for rocking out with us. Make sure you smash the like button and subscribe to the podcast. We drop new episodes each and every Thursday. You can tap in on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you like to get your favorite podcast. We're there. So for my special guest, Cam Franklin, and myself, take every day to learn, grow, and work because there is no other option. And until next time, please stay rebellious.
Yay!